Hello there, Little Masters, and welcome to another weekly episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where tonight, the good stuff will make you dream of elves.
West to Ha, my friends. I'm Sean Marchese, the real-life Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the man of the West, the Attercop to my Tom Noddy, Alan Sisto.
Well, that's just insulting to anybody.
Yes, it is. At least I made myself the Tom Noddy.
That's true. Folks, tonight we continue with Chapter 8 of The Hobbit, Flies and Spiders, and we'll finally find out why the chapter is called that.
Yes, we will. And as we mentioned at the beginning of our last episode, we've broken this chapter up into 3 episodes, so we can spend enough time on everything there is to talk about. So,
That's right.
If you haven't listened to our previous episode, 69 yet, go do that.
Yes, please. But first, it's time for another This Week in Tolkien History.
Yeah, we're going way, way back for this one. But on this day, February 18th, in 1857, Tolkien's father, Arthur Ruel Tolkien, was born in Handsworth, then in Staffordshire, near Birmingham. And on February 17th, in 1894, Tolkien's younger brother, Hilary Arthur Ruel Tolkien, was born. Now, like J.R.R., he was born in Bloemfontein, Orange Free State, in what is now South Africa.
You know, I'm always saddened when I read that first chapter of the Carpenter biography with Tolkien losing his father at such a young age.
Oh, yeah.
Really always kind of brings tears to my eyes thinking about that.
Definitely.
I've pulled something from more recently, well, from my lifetime at least, though it's hardly recent. On the 20th of January, 1969, now don't worry, did I say 20th of January? I meant 20th of February. I'm like, wait a minute, that's like this quarter in Tolkien history.
That's like a month ago.
I know.
We're getting really lazy with this segment, just like, it was
just
in the...
somewhere in the ballpark.
Somewhere in these 3 months.
It's the 20th of February, 1969. Rayner Unwin wrote to Tolkien. Now, the two had been communicating about the deal that was in the works for the film rights. In fact, that deal would be signed later that year in June. In one of the absolutely brilliant letters written by Unwin, he says, and I can only imagine he's echoing Tolkien's own view here. I mean, there aren't very many people who would have known Tolkien better than Rayner Unwin at this point.
Yeah.
And he says this: I am perfectly certain that we shall both of us dislike intensely every manifestation of what is done to the Lord of the Rings. He's talking about that, I think, in reference to the possibility that the Beatles were involved, which Tolkien was just absolutely abhor. I mean, it's just he found that totally abhorrent.
Well,
wanted nothing to do with that.
With good reason. I mean, I'm a Beatles fan. I don't want to see that.
I don't want to see that. And interestingly, digressing completely from our point, the Beatles had approached Stanley Kubrick to be the possible director, if they were able to get that project off the ground. And I just got to say, I don't know that I want Stanley Kubrick to be the director.
I'm a big Stanley Kubrick fan, and I don't want that.
I don't want the Lord of the Rings with like a Clockwork Orange feel, you know?
No, or 2001.
Or 2001, which I love 2001, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, going back to that wonderful quote about how we will dislike intensely every manifestation, Unwin points out that no matter how bad a film may be, and this is back to the letter itself, the book remains inviolable, and that is the main thing. What they do with the property in other media will, I regret to say, vary in degrees between bad at best and execrable at the worst. I mean, wow.
He's not mincing words.
Really. He's not. He's so subtle. I wonder what Rayner means by that.
I wonder what he really thought about the idea of a Lord of the Rings movie. Wow, that is a great find, and some great perspective.
Really is. I love it.
You know?
It is. I love the book remaining inviolable. That's true.
I think that's a great lesson for all of us who love Tolkien's work. And, you know, whatever we may think of the movies, the video games, the upcoming Amazon series, the books are always going to be there, inviolable.
And the books will always be the books.
Yeah, they will. And I like that, you know, as Rayner says, that is the main thing.
That is the main thing. Boy, that's a good reminder.
But
I have to say, it's pretty funny. I think I know which one would be execrable. Oh, goodness. But we won't go there because we've told our listeners we'll try
I tend to think that the
that.
Beatles in Lord of the Rings with, I think, John as Gollum, I think was the plan there.
Yeah,
that would have been
pretty
execrable.
Worse.
And, folks, I love the Beatles. I listen to the Beatles a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a John fan. He's kind of my favorite of the four. But no, I just don't see it here.
Yeah, that's still a no. Okay, well, that was
Anyway, I
this
think
week in
that's-
Tolkien history,
Yeah.
and now it's time to go ahead and get into our discussion. We're going to start right where we picked off. We're going to pick up right where we left off, I should say.
Yeah.
And they've just gotten Bilbo down from the top of the tree and complained as though the fact that they're not close enough to the edge to see it is somehow
Had
his
something
fault.
to do with the fact that they sent a hobbit up there instead
Exactly.
of a dwarf who could have summoned food from the ether.
Yeah, exactly. Out of absolutely nothing.
Summon sandwich. You cast the old dwarven summon sandwich spell.
I didn't prepare that this morning.
Well, we knew the hobbit couldn't do it.
Oh, goodness. Well, I think you actually
the
get
hobbit
to...
rogue.
The Hobbit, well, yeah, he doesn't have any spell
Right, he doesn't
casting
have
ability.
any magic.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that the dwarves can cast spells, right? We talked about
right,
that
yeah.
several episodes ago. We ended up having to dive into our postscript to talk about the fact
To
that,
talk
yes,
about dwarven magic. Yeah.
dwarven spells. But yeah, I don't think they have summon sandwich.
Summon sandwich. Obviously not, because that would have solved a lot of their problems.
Clearly that would have. Because, summon black squirrel really wasn't going to be any good at all.
No. No.
How about summon arrow? Can we summon arrow?
Summon foul-smelling mushroom wasn't really...
No.
Nobody ever prepares that spell.
Nobody. That's a total waste of a spell. Why is that even in the book?
Why'd you even
All
waste
right.
a spell slot on that one?
I
Okay.
know. Seriously.
That night they ate their very last scraps and crumbs of food. And next morning, when they woke, the first thing they noticed was that they were still gnawingly hungry. And the next thing was that it was raining, and that here and there the drip of it was dropping heavily on the forest floor. That only reminded them that they were also parchingly thirsty, without doing anything to relieve them. You cannot quench a terrible thirst by standing under giant oaks and waiting for a chance drip to fall on your tongue. The only scrap of comfort there was came unexpectedly from Bombur. He woke up suddenly and sat up, scratching his head. He could not make out where he was at all, nor why he felt so hungry, for he had forgotten everything that had happened since they started their journey that May morning long ago. The last thing that he remembered was the party at the Hobbit's house, and they had great difficulty in making him believe their tale of all the many adventures they had had since.
My goodness, that's a pretty significant chunk of time that he's lost.
Yeah, boy, talk about forgetfulness. I think
Yeah.
Beorn kind of undersold it.
Yeah, I think he really did. It's how long ago has that been? That's been months now.
Yeah, this is
at
fall,
least-
right?
Yeah.
Because we talked about the autumn leaves. in
Yeah, the
last
autumn
episode,
leaves, and we know they left, the end of April?
Yeah. The
No.
May, the beginning of May.
Yeah,
They started their journey that May morning, yeah.
that's right, that May morning.
So we're looking at, 4 to 6 months lost.
Yeah, probably, 4 or 5 months, 6 months maybe. Yeah,
4, actually, because
that
I
sounds
think
right.
Bilbo's birthday is coming up in
You're right,
a chapter
it
or
does. Thank you very much.
So this is September.
Yeah, so this is like late August, early September, because they do spend some time in the Elven King's Hall. So yeah,
Yeah.
it could be late August at this point. But yeah, certainly 3.5, close to 4 months. It's a long time to
That is
lose.
a very long time to lose.
And what a miserable situation to wake up. They've all at least eaten their last scraps and crumbs of food. Bombur hasn't even had that.
Right.
So wait a minute. You're telling me the food's gone?
Right.
The food's gone. Where is all the food gone? I'm sorry, that was
I feel like I should know that.
a very bad Jack Sparrow. Where is the rum? Where is all the rum gone? Where is all the food gone?
That was a deep, layered reference.
Yeah, very, very,
Yeah.
very so deep. Nobody would have gotten it if I didn't have to explain
The
it.
rum. Where's the rum gone?
Where is all the rum gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they would be perfectly happy with rum because at least it would quench their terrible thirst. Though that might also make them, forgetful
That would make them
and unconscious.
quite forgetful. Yeah.
But yeah, I can't even imagine being that thirsty and just hanging around trying to catch a drop of water. But you could certainly gather something. I mean, get a leather skin, spread it out, and catch enough rainwater to get a pint or two.
Maybe.
I don't
But
know.
a pint
They're not
between
survivalists,
13
clearly.
Well, a pint between 13 dwarves. I mean, what are they going to,
Do it over and over again. How long
they'll
this rain's going to last, right?
Well,
I mean,
that's a good point.
yeah. Presumably it wouldn't take them a couple hours to collect
They
a
could
pint.
maybe have done more than they did.
They could. That's what I'm thinking. But they're very tired. They're very weak. At this point, they're exhausted. They really have reached their limit.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
sure
and
they're-
we've seen I think we talked about this last time. We've seen there's a lot of these, like, if only they had done something a little different. Like when Bilbo climbed up the tree, if only he had seen... If he'd
noticed the fact that they were in that bowl. Right.
Yeah, he would have noticed he was in this bowl. I think there's a lot of these moments, and they're just not at their best.
No, they're not. This has been a
really rough journey for them, and it's taken a lot out of it.
It really has taken a toll. You're right.
Yeah. They're not thinking clearly.
Yeah. My goodness. So he does not remember any of that.
Nope.
And he tells them about the dream that he had.
Oh, man.
The torches and the lamps and the feast and the king. He describes it, vividly. And, of course, Thorin's like, shut up.
We don't need to hear about that. Yeah. We're annoyed enough with you as it is.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Leave you to your idiotic dreams in the forest. You know, that the woodland king coming in the dream, that's also in Sir Orfeo.
Yes, it is.
Which we talked about last time.
Yeah, in fact, I think it actually was in your quote. The fairy king, rode by on the horse.
We talked about the forest, but I'm thinking of even earlier than that. There's the wife has a dream about the woodland king. Yeah,
was that the one when she falls asleep and then she gets captured by the fairies?
Yes, exactly. And I think he wore a crown of light or something like that. Mm-hmm. But this does make me wonder, exactly where does the enchantment on the stream come from?
Yeah. Yeah, we've been thinking about that, haven't we?
We have, and I certainly don't think we have anything truly definitive, but we've been doing some thinking and some talking. I think it's natural to assume that the enchantment is an evil thing,
right?
Maybe coming from the necromancer or Sauron, because
or even from the forest itself,
or even from the forest itself. But we know a lot of the darkness and evil in the forest does come.
That's true. That's true. It used to be Greenwood the Great before
Right. But the fact that Bombur dreams of a feast and the Elven King and not spiders suggests, to me at least, that the enchantment is actually Elvish in origin. And I think it's closely related to the fact that this is Elvish territory. Remember, this is the Elven King's hunting grounds. We saw the hunt last time.
That's true.
I noticed that Gandalf, at the end of the last chapter, he specifically said that the south is the land of the necromancer. Mm-hmm. And they've been staying as far away from the south as they can. They've taken the northernmost path. And, if you look at the map, you see that the stream actually flows down from the mountains of Mirkwood. That's nowhere near Dol Guldur.
No, the mountains of Mirkwood are almost they're pretty much the central part of the forest.
Right.
And the
Dol
stream
Guldur is
flows
basically the southern edge.
Yeah.
It's not even on the map in this book, I don't think.
No.
You have to look at the Lord of the Rings map to find it. Yeah. So I really am. I'm starting to feel like the enchantment actually is coming from the elves. It might be an elvish defense.
Yeah.
And they just happen to be the unlucky people who've stumbled upon it.
I have to tell you, I don't think I was there, a year ago. I don't think I was there even a month ago. But, and as much as I would love to disagree with you, because that's so much more fun.
It would make for such good drama on the show.
It really would. I have to say, I think you're right. I mean, like you said, it's what he dreams about that tells you so much about the nature of this enchantment. The dream is part of the enchantment. Is it possible that the falling asleep and forgetfulness is unrelated to the dream, and that there's kind of a combination of the two? Yeah, that's possible.
Maybe.
That's hard to separate and it doesn't make any sense. Because Tolkien really doesn't want us to confuse these two forces.
Right.
The good but eerie.
You talked last time about the two forces that are at war with each other.
Yeah,
we talked about how easy it is to confuse those. Yeah,
it is, and and it seems that Tolkien really takes pains to make sure we don't confuse them, at least if we're paying attention. And that tells me that this would have to be one or the other, not some weird combination.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it were not for the Elven King, would this have just been an ordinary river? Or an ordinary stream? Maybe not, but it certainly wouldn't have been the stream that caused what Bombur experienced.
Right.
This
and remember, there was that boat.
Yeah.
There was that boat on the stream.
The elves definitely go there. I mean, this is definitely, those boats weren't just there to, for hanging out. Those were boats involved in getting the elven party across the water for the hunt when it was necessary.
Right.
Even though on the map, that's a very long way away from the Elven King's halls.
It is.
Which I think is probably why I originally leaned towards the idea that it came from either the forest itself or from, the kind of the infected forest, if you will, or from Sauron down in Dol Guldur. But I think...
But if you want to talk about far away, I mean, Sauron is much farther away.
Oh, much farther away.
I don't know. I mean, I'm leaning this way. I'm really curious if anybody listening has found something definitive on it.
Yes,
If
because we've
someone
looked.
has, please send it to us. We've looked. We haven't really found anything definitive, and so that's sort of left the door open.
I mean,
for
we've
this,
looked at Ratliff, we've looked through Anderson, we've looked through. I spent some time looking through the Hammond and Skull's Reader's Guide, and there's nothing. Nothing. Couldn't find anything on this.
I looked in History of Middle Earth. There's not much on the Hobbit.
No,
in History of Middle
there's
Earth,
not much.
unfortunately. But just looking at references to Mirkwood, can't find anything. So if anybody's got a better answer, let us know. But that's kind of where I'm leaning on this. Yeah,
I agree. I'm leaning there too. I mean, like I said, I think the only thing that would be different would be a mix of the two. But that just seems so weird that I can't buy that.
It seems unnecessarily complicated.
Yeah, exactly. Which is not what Tolkien's trying to do here.
Right.
So Bomber, boy, he's just, I mean, he's finally waking up. Well, he wakes up and he realizes that, 5 months have gone by since the last thing he can remember. And probably, 6 days at least since he's eaten anything.
True.
Maybe longer than that. And he literally just wants to stop. I'm just going to lie here and sleep and dream of food.
Yeah.
I hope I never wake up again. I mean, wow. It's pretty dark.
That's where we see, I mean, I feel like that's where we see the true danger of the stream's enchantment.
Yeah.
It's not just that it causes forgetfulness, but it also causes a craving for that forgetfulness.
Mm-hmm. I want more forgetfulness. I want more dream and less reality.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, he's found this blissful oblivion and he wants to go back to it. Even after the immediate effect of the sleepiness wears off, he wants to go back to that place.
Yeah. Because this is not like 5 minutes later. I mean, I get that. You wake up from a long sleep, and it takes a long time to shake out the cobwebs. Sometimes you just want to go right back to bed. But this is the rest of the day. This they did all that day, going very slowly and wearily. So, this is hours later, and he wants to just lie down and sleep and dream, and never wake up again.
There isn't there?
There is that last line. I hope I never wake up again is very despairing.
Yeah, that we don't see that word. We don't see the word despair itself, but we talk about hope and despair a lot in Tolkien's work, and that definitely smacks of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
there is nothing I can do, so I'd rather just sleep.
Yeah,
and
never wake up.
Else.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, let me sleep so at least I can have, that vision in my mind of some food, and then I'll be strong enough to go on. It's like, no, I don't ever want to wake up again. Pretty incredibly dark.
Yep.
Balin the lookout, always paying attention.
Good old Balin.
Yeah, I mean, he sees a little bit of light. They sit and start to discuss, what are they going to do? They're arguing, okay, we're not supposed to go off the road.
Right.
Don't leave the path.
They were warned many times to stay on the path. 4
times, I think we counted. I think
something like
3
that.
times from Gandalf and once from Beorn.
That sounds right.
Don't leave the path. So, of course, they don't want to. We're not supposed to go. We shouldn't do this. But they eventually come to the point where they realize, it's great to not leave the road, but if we're corpses, then what does it matter? Starving to death isn't going to help. So, let's go ahead and head over there. It's funny. I love how they're going to send out a couple spies first, but nobody wants to go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. So I'm going to go ahead and read then what happens when they get to this first site. After a good deal of creeping and crawling, they peered round the trunks and looked into a clearing where some trees had been felled and the ground leveled. There were many people there, elvish-looking folk, all dressed in green and brown, and sitting on sawn rings of the felled trees in a great circle. There was a fire in their midst, and there were torches fastened to some of the trees round about. But most splendid sight of all, they were eating and drinking and laughing merrily. The smell of the roast meats was so enchanting that without waiting to consult one another, every one of them got up and scrambled forwards into the ring with the one idea of begging for some food. No sooner had the first stepped into the clearing than all the lights went out, as if by magic. Somebody kicked the fire, and it went up in rockets of glittering sparks and vanished. They were lost in a completely lightless dark, and they could not even find one another, not for a long time at any rate. After blundering frantically in the gloom, falling over logs, bumping crash into trees, and shouting and calling till they must have waked everything in the forest for miles. At last they managed to gather themselves in a bundle and count themselves by touch. Oh my, oh my,
Wow.
oh my.
What an image.
It is an image.
You know? The lights suddenly going out, the glittering sparks coming up
from
from
the fire. Yeah. And then just panic. Panic.
Mm-hmm.
You know you're not near the road. You're in this, they're in a clearing at least. But they have to try to, find each other. I'll notice something, though. Remember when we had that question recently from Tarek about the green elves of Osirian and how they didn't like the men because they were hewers of trees and hunters of beasts? They're not just hunters of beasts here. We knew they were hunters of beasts because they were hunting hunting the heart earlier. Right. And we get here that the smell of the roast
and we
meats.
even talked about the roast meats being proof that they're not vegetarians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But notice that the trees had been felled
Saw
and the ground
tree
leveled.
rings. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're hewers of trees and hunters of beasts.
Yep, that's true. That's a good catch.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed the trees before, I didn't think. Which, that's interesting because given how Tolkien feels about trees. That felling
to see the
trees,
elves actually sitting on
tree stumps.
on sawing up trees,
Wow.
as opposed to, just sitting on... Well, I wonder, did it say...
I mean, it doesn't say they felled it, but who else would have?
But who else, yeah. I mean, I suppose it's possible that they could have, just sawn up some
These
trees
are the trees that had already died?
fallen in.
Yeah. Possible.
Could be. We don't know that, though.
No,
There's really no
no.
reason to believe that there is. Elves do use wood.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
they
Well, they
probably
would have
do.
used them for the fire, if nothing else.
Yeah, so they probably do cut down trees. But yeah, that's a good catch.
Yeah, it's interesting. I also couldn't help but think of an Arby's commercial, the smell of the roast meats. So, Arby's, we've got the meats. We have the meats. That dude, by the way, that dude's got a voice for those ads.
I'd like a large enchantment burger.
I'd like a
or
large.
roast beef sandwich.
Yeah.
A large enchantment sandwich.
Yes, please.
Summon me one of those enchantment sandwiches.
Yeah, why don't you with some curly fries? So, I love the way these elves are dressed. They're exactly how you'd expect them to be dressed in green and brown. There's a fire. They are eating and drinking and laughing. It's
a delightful scene.
It's a wonderful scene.
It's you want to be in that party.
I want to be there. I want to be eating these wonderful roast meats.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to say meats. I'm like, that's not a word. Roast meats. Well, it
well,
comes
that's
from...
like me talking about the Mises.
Well,
not long
no, it
ago.
comes... Actually, I can tell you where it comes from. Every Christmas, I read How the Grinch Stole Christmas. out
Roast
loud.
beast.
And
Yeah,
it made me think
yeah.
of the roast beast.
Sure.
And so
I get that.
Yeah. That's why I keep getting the S before
Yeah.
the T.
Yeah.
And the Grinch himself carved the roast beast. Boy, we digress.
We do.
We do.
Hey,
I just absolutely,
the Grinch.
we go from this magical moment of seeing and smelling everything but tasting the one thing they need.
So close to having
they've got everything
what they've
else.
been craving.
They can see
Yeah.
it, they can hear it, they can smell it.
And just
And then
one step out.
Gone
Yep.
into nothing. I mean, just heartbreaking and then terrifying as they're trying to find each other.
Absolutely. I mean, they're in, again, pitch dark.
Yeah, and now off the path.
And now off the path. They're in a clearing, so good luck finding the way, east again.
Yeah. Have fun with that.
The way to the road. I mean, or the way to the road, I guess I should say. Yeah.
Yeah. Big.
This is not good.
No. Now they find each other and they realize, of course, hey, you know what? Let's not try to go anywhere. Let's settle down right here, and we'll wait for
That at least
for
was
the
smart.
daylight. Oh,
Yeah.
Very smart.
Yeah.
But that doesn't last long because then Dory sees, because he's on watch, he sees lights again, and there's more of them. So this time, what is it? Scores of twinkling lights. I mean, scores. So
Yeah,
there's
scores,
multiple 20s, 60, 80, 100, twinkling lights.
Yeah.
I love that they're thinking this through a little bit more closely. Right now, they're in a single line.
Single file line, each touching the back, so
Yep.
they can they'll stay together.
Yep, they won't get lost.
Let's not get separated.
And then Thorin even thinks, well, instead of, well, of course they got weirded out. There were 13 of us. Let's just send Bilbo in. He's not scary.
They won't be frightened of him.
Nobody is frightened of him.
I love. What about me of them? Thought
that.
Bilbo.
That's an awesome little insert from the narrator to tell us that. And then Thorin, like, well, I hope they won't do anything nasty to him.
Yeah.
Like, well, they might, but
hey,
they are in a desperate situation, to be fair.
Probably least likely to be killed on sight.
That's true. I mean, out of the 13 of them, he is the least likely.
Yeah.
Certainly the least threatening.
Yeah.
But of course he couldn't.
And the least dwarvish.
And the least, no beard. But he couldn't get his ring on, which I think that would have helped.
Right. Yeah, because they pushed him from behind before he could get the ring on. Thanks a lot, guys.
Would that have helped? I think it would. I mean,
I think it would have.
I don't think they would have noticed his presence there.
I think you're right.
It would have been an interesting thing to see. But so he doesn't get in, and now you've got a passage to read that includes our favorite word.
Oh yes. All right. If it had been difficult collecting themselves before, it was far worse this time, and they simply could not find the Hobbit. Every time they counted themselves, it only made 13. They shouted and called, "Bilbo Baggins! Hobbit! You dreaded Hobbit! Hi! Hobbit, confusticate you! Where are you?" and other things of that sort. But there was no answer. They were just giving up hope when Dory stumbled across him by sheer luck. In the dark, he fell over what he thought was a log, and he found it was the Hobbit curled up fast asleep. It took a deal of shaking to wake him, and when he was awake, he was not pleased at all. "I was having such a lovely dream," he grumbled, "all about having a most gorgeous dinner." "Good heavens, he is gone like Bomber," they said. "Don't tell us about dreams. Dream dinners aren't any good, and we can't share them." "They are the best I'm likely to get in this beastly place," he muttered, as he lay down beside the dwarves and tried to go back to sleep and find his dream again.
Just like Bomber, he wants to go back to sleep right away. I mean, he's not despairing like Bomber did, but he clearly has a craving for that dream.
And this, now that I'm reading it again, this I think just kind of secures it for me that the enchantment comes from the elves, because the same thing is happening to Bilbo, and he didn't
fall
get
into the water, right?
He got this directly from the elves.
Yeah, it is an elvish enchantment. You're absolutely right.
It would have to be.
Yeah. Now, in his case, he was able to be woken up, whereas Bomber couldn't be.
That is true.
Now, so that's where it's like, okay, well, the stream makes the enchantment stronger, but
maybe so. Yeah.
I mean, this is just I don't even know how he was enchanted in this case, but certainly it's an elvish enchantment. You're right about that.
Yeah. You just imagine the whole thing is kind of comical.
Oh,
just the way complete darkness fell. You almost imagine the puff of smoke.
Yeah, you really can. It's gone. And I love this. Dory stumbled across Bilbo by sheer luck.
Oh, good catch.
Luck again. And of course, it wasn't luck, but because they have to find Bilbo, because Bilbo's the only one who's going to be able to get him out of what comes next. But
right.
What a moment! What a moment!
Yeah.
And he's absolutely ticked. Like, don't wake me up. I'm enjoying my dream very much. And I don't want being awake. There's no point to that.
Yeah, dream dinners are the best thing I'm going to get here.
Yeah.
So
my goodness.
Yeah, and we gotta give a shout out to the word confusticate.
Yes, love that word.
I did say, I promised that I would point it out when it came again.
Yep.
This is it. This is sadly the last occurrence of this word in The Hobbit.
Or I think the Legendarium, probably, to be fair. I may be wrong, but I don't think it shows up in The Lord of the Rings.
I don't think we're maybe in a line of Sam dialogue, but I can't remember it.
Yeah, I don't think
is.
so. I could look that up pretty quick, but I doubt it. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't appear in the Children of Hurin.
I'm pretty sure
there's
it doesn't.
There's a tone issue right there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Just imagine Glaurung, casting his spell on Nienor.
Nienor was confuscated.
I will confuscate you, daughter of Hurin.
Oh, goodness.
You shall be flabbergasted.
You should be flabbergasted. Oh, goodness. I love that. I think it would be hilarious to take some of these moments and redo the tone, right? Take that Silmarillion in the tone of The Hobbit or vice versa.
Do it in the tone of The Hobbit. We talked about Tolkien doing The Hobbit in the tone of The Lord of the Rings, or trying to do that later on. Yeah, that would be hilarious to try and see,
maybe there's another idea for another Prancing Pony Pondering.
Yeah.
Rewrite a paragraph.
Children of Hurin done in a... Oh, man, don't tempt me. Cause... Do not tempt me, Frodo.
Don't tempt me, Frodo.
Oh, man.
Goodness. Good stuff.
That's great. I love it.
In the original manuscript, we talked about this last time, that how in the original manuscript the stream wasn't even there, and the hart and the deer.
Right.
In that original manuscript, it was Thorin, who, of course, was then named Gandalf, because that's not confusing,
Not at all.
who went out and into the second set of lights. And then it was Bilbo who fell over what seemed a log. And Thorin, Thorin, who was named Gandalf, had also had the
Right.
dream about the feast. Now, this was the first occurrence of this originally because of the dream, because the enchanted river was something that appeared later. So
Oh,
he
right,
did get the
okay.
enchantment in. That you know what? That absolutely
catch.
clinches it. That clinches,
you're right.
100% clinches that it is
Yeah.
an elvish
It is
enchantment.
an elvish enchantment. I think you're
Because
absolutely right.
in the first draft, the enchantment happened.
there was no river.
There was no
and
river.
The only occurrence of the enchantment was the elves.
Yeah, it's elves. So I thought that was fascinating, though, that was it was Thorin himself who had gone out in that second set of lights, and that Bilbo found him by luck. I mean, it virtually reads the same, that Bilbo stumbled across him by sheer luck and things like that.
Interesting. I wonder. I mean, I'm glad he changed it because
Oh, yeah,
obviously it gives Bilbo something to do.
Well, right, and Thorin
Bilbo's
goes out of
gradually
the third
stepping into the hero role.
Yeah.
I wonder what he was thinking by having Thorin do it in the first place.
Yeah, though of course it was
Gandalf.
Gandalf,
I
but
see
yeah.
what you mean. Yeah, I know. You know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad he changed it too. I know that Ratliff has quite extensive notes on that, so it might be worth looking into.
I'll have to go back and look into that a little bit.
So I'm going to go ahead as they see the lights for the third time. Third time's a charm. And this time it's not just lights. Now they hear singing and harps because, the party's just got to get better. This is actually what they don't tell you is this is the after party. this.
Right. Yeah, it's 2:00 in the morning. The party's, they've moved on to another location.
Yeah. They've brought their own now because all the bars at the first and second clearing, they closed.
Right.
So,
Okay.
all right, I'm going to go ahead and pick up. Up they got again, and this time the result was disastrous. The feast that they now saw was greater and more magnificent than before, and at the head of a long line of feasters sat a woodland king with a crown of leaves upon his golden hair, very much as Bomber had described the figure in his dream. The elvish folk were passing bowls from hand to hand and across the fires, and some were harping, and many were singing. Their gleaming hair was twined with flowers, green and white gems glinted on their collars and their belts, and their faces and their songs were filled with mirth. Loud and clear and fair were those songs, and out stepped Thorin into their midst. Dead silence fell in the middle of a word. Out went all light. The fires leaped up in black smokes. Ashes and cinders were in the eyes of the dwarves, and the wood was filled again with their clamor and their cries. Bilbo found himself running round and round as he thought, and calling, Dori, Nori, Ori, Éowyn, Glóin, Fili, Kili, Bomber, Biffer, Bolfer, Dwalin, Balin, Thorin Oakenshield, while people he could not see or feel were doing the same all around him, with an occasional Bilbo thrown in. But the cries of the others got steadily further and fainter, and though after a while it seemed to him they changed to yells and cries for help in the far distance, all noise at last died right away, and he was left alone in complete silence and darkness. Wow.
The utter bewilderment they must be feeling.
Unbelievable. Yeah, or
running around in the dark.
yeah, with the ashes and the smoke and and now Bilbo, total silence.
And just hearing this clamor of voices, your friends' voices calling your name and the same names you're calling,
and they're going away. That must be that must have been such a hard moment to hear those voices going further and further away, and realizing you're losing them.
Yeah.
And then to hear them at the very end calling out for help, and then there's silence.
Creepy.
But let's go back to the beginning of that, because the description of the scene is beautiful. I mean,
great and magnificent indeed. Tolkien uses these words.
Yeah,
Man.
Yeah. And
it is lovely.
What a moment. You thought you wanted to be part of this party before.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now, I mean, the image of the king with the crown of leaves upon his hair. And they recognize this figure from Bomber talking about his dream. I mean, here's this king from a dream has come to life in front of you. The passing the bowls from hand to hand, I love that, because it's a reminder that, as treacherous as this whole experience is, and as much danger as they're in, remember, these are elves.
Yeah.
And as we'll read later in the chapter, thus good people.
Yep, I love that.
And so we see, they're sharing their bowls, we see their beauty, we see the mirth.
Oh, yeah, and the music.
We see, their songs are clear and fair.
I think there's also something interesting here with the gems. The green and white gems glinted on their collars and their belts.
Oh, that's a good catch, yeah.
Yeah, what we'll find out later about the Elven King and his
love of
passion for gems, yeah.
Yeah. There's just so much beauty in this
really
scene, and
is.
so much happiness and joy in this scene. And that has got to just be brutal for them that they can't participate in this. There's so much pleasure that the elves are having.
Well, and
enjoying.
There's
right
a
now,
linguistic thing that
that
happens here that I love too. I mean, what I see here in this description of the party is just a ton of life, right? I think it's not an accident. He could have chosen to start that next paragraph with "total silence fell in the middle of a word," or just "silence fell in the middle of a word." I think there's a reason. Not a reason, but I think there's an artistic reason, a linguistic reason why he uses the word
for saying
dead silence.
Dead silence.
Because here we've just been given this description of something that sounds so very alive.
So much life.
Exactly, so much life. And then you get this transition that out stepped Thorin into their midst, dead silence fell in the middle of a word. And now you get these short sentences of out went all light. The fires leaped up in black smoke. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences in that tiny little paragraph.
Yeah.
Whereas up 4, 3, I'm counting.
You've got
there's 4
semicolons.
sentences in the previous.
You've got a sentence with 2 semicolons.
Right. From the
it's long sentences. It's this long, drawn out, very elaborate, very kind of what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't know. It's just a very
full
and kind of sensory scene.
Yes, yes, you're right. It definitely draws in the senses. You start to see this. You can start to hear these things. You can start to kind of smell the food, and it's very, like you said, very sensory oriented. And then all of a sudden, it's sensory deprivation.
Yeah.
So
no light,
and we end with complete silence and darkness. So
you're right.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. And yet Bilbo continues to amaze, doesn't he? You've got the next reading.
He does,
and it's a really, really important passage. In fact, this may be the most important passage that we've come across so far, I think. In terms of Bilbo's development, right.
It's definitely top 2.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I mean, the ring is right there.
Maybe another chapter 5 moment, but this one, I'll read it in just a moment, but I mean, we'll see just how much more determination and resourcefulness he has. He's kind of less out of options, and he's just choosing the right option.
That's exactly right. Whereas I think in chapter 5, it was, what else is he going to do? He has no other choice.
Right. So, with no further ado, let me go ahead and read it. That was one of his most miserable moments. But he soon made up his mind that it was no good trying to do anything till day came with some little light, and quite useless to go blundering about tiring himself out, with no hope of any breakfast to revive him. So he sat himself down with his back to a tree, and not for the last time fell to thinking of his far-distant hobbit hole with its beautiful pantries. He was deep in thoughts of bacon and eggs and toast and butter, when he felt something touch him. Something like a strong, sticky string was against his left hand, and when he tried to move, he found that his legs were already wrapped in the same stuff, so that when he got up, he fell over. Then the great spider, who had been busy tying him up while he dozed, came from behind him and came at him. He could only see the thing's eyes, but he could feel its hairy legs as it struggled to wind its abominable threads round and round him. I know, man.
Oh.
Yeah, what were you saying about no fear of spiders?
Well, okay,
regular
spiders.
Yeah.
I don't mind regular spiders I can step on.
Oh, you can be forgiven for, being afraid of these kinds of spiders.
I'd probably be afraid of all the spiders in Australia, because I hear they're, there they have platter-sized spiders.
Yeah, this is like megaloarachnophobia.
Yeah, there you go.
Giant spider fear.
Yeah, which is a good thing that there are no giant spiders. So.
Yes, except in Australia.
Well, yeah.
But not this giant.
Not this big, thank goodness.
It was lucky that he had come to his senses in time. Soon he would not have been able to move at all. As it was, he had a desperate fight before he got free. He beat the creature off with his hands. It was trying to poison him to keep him quiet, as small spiders do to flies, until he remembered his sword and drew it out. Then the spider jumped back, and he had time to cut his legs loose. After that, it was his turn to attack. The spider evidently was not used to things that carried such stings at their sides, or it would have hurried away quicker. Bilbo came at it before it could disappear, and stuck it with his sword right in the eyes. Then it went mad and leaped and danced and flung out its legs in horrible jerks, until he killed it with another stroke. And then he fell down and remembered nothing more for a long while.
My goodness. What an incredible moment. I got to say, I'm still stuck on deep in thoughts of bacon and eggs and toast and butter. I could do that all day.
I am always deep in thoughts of bacon and eggs and toast and butter.
Yeah, creepy moments. I mean, feeling its hairy legs, yeah. That just chills. I think it's fascinating that Tolkien gives it its name before Bilbo gives it its name, when he says that the spider wasn't used to things that carried such stings at their sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's really intriguing, such a little reveal. But Bilbo...
It's a great flip of prey to predator.
It really is. And he's doing something different. You know, we talked about the similarities with Chapter 5 in terms of the significance of the moment. And that may still be the case, that this isn't any more significant, but it is different because in the Goblin Tunnels, he was trying to escape the darkness. Here, he is actively trying to defeat the darkness. He's taking the fight to the enemy.
Yes, you're
with a bravery that certainly would have never been imagined by the original Bilbo Baggins, who left the Shire at that early made, day.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, he remembers the sword, and in Chapter 5,
remembering the sword, I think, is a big step.
It is. It's a huge step
to begin with.
He remembered it in Chapter 5, but it seemed to be like he felt like, it would make him, the goblins don't like this sword, so at least nobody will attack me.
Right.
Here, instead of being sort of...
He was thinking of it as a defense.
Exactly, like a defense, but not even like
a deterrent. Really.
That's a much better word, right.
Yeah.
And here, it is a weapon. It is a full-blown, no hesitation, no doubt weapon. Yeah. Really cool moment.
And that's why I love the comparison to the fly. Yes. We talked about the sting. That's what I said. He starts as the prey. Yeah, he was the fly. He was being wrapped up like in poison. Yeah. But this fly's got a weapon.
Yes, he does.
And it stings.
And it does. It's a good thing there's not another spider around, though, because after he kills this one, he faints. So there is that.
Something very Bagginsy about that,
isn't there?
I think. It's got this great moment.
Yeah.
And then, got a case of the vapors.
I mean, I can see the Martin Freeman thing now, where he just kind of, nope, and then he falls down.
Martin Freeman could do a
brilliant
fall
feint,
like nobody. That was great. Yeah.
What an absolute moment.
Like you said, this really is a big change for Bilbo. Yeah. And what's the next? Is it fierce?
That's
bold?
Exactly right. In fact, we're not going to read the passage, but we'll read little bits and pieces. That this killing that he did all on his own, without the wizard, without the dwarves, made a great difference to Mr. Baggins. He felt a different person and much fiercer and bolder in spite of an empty stomach. Mm-hmm. That fierceness is really big.
It is.
I thought that word might be significant. I could remember it being used before. I thought it might have been used somewhere in Chapter 5, but it wasn't. I did a word search on it. Back in Chapter 1, and I love this. This was after he'd been called... No, this was not quite the grocer scene, but it was in the unexpected party. And Bilbo felt that he would go without bed and breakfast to be thought fierce. To be thought fierce. It was important then that he be fierce in somebody else's eyes, even if he was not fierce.
To appear fierce, even though he's
Here,
not
nobody
really.
sees him. Here, he's not fierce in anybody's eyes, but he is fierce. Right? I mean,
that's a good
it is no
catch.
longer about his image. It is about his nature. It's about his ability to be fierce when necessary. And that's really big.
That's a really good catch, and we're reminded of his empty stomach.
Right,
so,
in spite of.
We're reminded that he actually has gone without bed and breakfast.
Yeah, in spite of the Bagginsy thing. And that is pretty funny because, it doesn't say to Bilbo. The narrator says a great difference to Mr. Baggins.
Right.
You mentioned what an interesting catch or what an interesting twist that was.
Yeah.
Because
Because he's referred to as Mr. Baggins at his most Tookish moment.
Exactly.
That
why not just call him Bilbo there? But I think that's there
Right.
on purpose to give us that contrast.
I think it is. Yeah, he's giving us that contrast. And I think a few episodes and a few chapters ago, I talked about breaking the Baggins. Well, now he's releasing the Took.
Yes.
Release the Took.
Took.
And he does. And I think that you're right that, and we were talking about this, the narrator is drawing attention to the fact that he may be Mr. Baggins, but this is a very different person.
This is a very different person. And it's made a great difference to him. This ability to do something on his own has changed how he views himself. And then, of course, there's the very cool moment where he actually names the sword.
The naming of the sword. And I
Such
love...
significance to that.
There's a... I think here's a place where I think Corey Olsen had a really great observation in his book. He says that Bilbo marks the occasion in a style very typical of Tolkien's fiction by the granting of a new name. And that name is reflective of the fact that he was the prey, he was the fly, but he stung back.
Well, you're right, because you think about
cool.
other swords that get renamed. You get Narsil becomes Andoril. You get
Anglakel becomes Gorthang. Yeah.
I'm sure there are more, but those are the two that come to mind.
It's sort of a turning point. It's kind of it's almost a rite of passage for Bilbo as a hero.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is that moment, isn't it?
He's graduated. It's like Luke Skywalker making his own lightsaber.
Yes.
He's graduated to the point. Your skills are now complete.
There you go. You do wonder, though, about the name of the sword. Did he clear that with Gordon Sumner? Just wondering.
Maybe he sent him a message in a bottle.
Oh, well played.
Well
played. Such synchronicity in that response.
I know, yeah. And
did that just
Gordon
go right
didn't get
over
the message because he was... No.
I wasn't sure.
I got it. Gordon didn't get the message because he was walking on the moon.
Oh, my goodness. This is going to keep on going, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, every little thing we do is magic, Alan. You know that.
You know what? And I was going there, but you did it. Now I'm just trying to figure out, maybe you should have named the sword Roxanne. Okay.
See?
That's a really big digression. We're just going to...
You don't have to put on the blue light. See, we could do this all night.
All night long, folks. All night. Oh, goodness. Boy, is Mythmoot going to be fun or what? We're going to have so much fun. I hope that some of you folks, listening to us now can join us at Mythmoot when we go in June, because the digressions in a live show... where we can't push the button and say we're going to edit that.
Where we can't edit if it's a silly one.
Yeah. That's going to be
not
fun.
like we've ever been too shy about really silly.
Well, no, because then we just turn them into bloopers.
Yeah.
So now he goes ahead and now that he's feeling fiercer and bolder, and he's given his sort of name, he decides to take action. That's another kind of big thing that Bilbo decides to do.
I think it's interesting that the first thing he does is he sets out to explore.
Yeah. Get an idea of his surroundings. Figure out where he is. Mm-hmm. He's got to find his friends. Figure out what's gone on with them. Mm-hmm. And he knows he has to do it quietly.
Yeah.
He felt that it was unsafe to shout. So of course he's lamenting why didn't we stay on the path? But the reality is
himself. They were probably going to die without food anyway, as they said.
Yeah, they really, certainly within a matter of days. Mm-hmm. So he just, I love this. Before the passage that I'm going to read next, we get this little line that, in the end, he made as good a guess as he could, and by luck, he was born with a good share of it. He guessed more or less right, as you will see. That's so cool, being born with a good share of luck.
The innate Hobbit luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Bilbo luck, not Hobbits, but Bilbo specifically.
Bilbo specifically. And again, it just seems like there's some outside force shaping his destiny, and that luck is a big part of that. Yet he still has to do the thing. Because even though...
He has to make the right decisions.
Exactly.
He has to be resourceful.
Well, and he has to execute it. He may have guessed more or less right, but now that he's made up his mind, he has to do the thing. He has to creep along cleverly, and then, he has to slip on his ring because he's smart enough to remember that he has it, and then we get to the next passage.
Yeah.
So
he has to, and, the sword. Mm-hmm. We think of the times that he's he forgets the sword until he remembers it. He has to remember it, and he has to use it.
Yeah.
He has to think of the right thing to do at the right time.
That's exactly right. So he does have to accomplish. Even though he has the luck, he still has to do. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and read the next passage then.
Okay.
He had picked his way stealthily for some distance when he noticed a place of dense black shadow ahead of him. Black even for that forest, like a patch of midnight that had never been cleared away. As he drew nearer, he saw that it was made by spider webs, one behind and over and tangled with another. Suddenly he saw, too, that there were spiders huge and horrible sitting in the branches above him. And ring or no ring, he trembled with fear lest they should discover him. Standing behind a tree, he watched a group of them for some time, and then, in the silence and stillness of the wood, he realized that these loathsome creatures were speaking one to another. Their voices were a sort of thin creaking and hissing, but he could make out many of the words that they said. They were talking about the dwarves.
"It was a sharp struggle, but worth it," said one. "What nasty thick skins they have, to be sure, but I'll wager there's good juice inside." "Aye, they'll make fine eating when they've hung a bit," said another.
"Don't hang 'em too long," said a third.
"They're not as fat as they might be. Been feeding none too well of late, I should guess." "Kill 'em, I say," hissed a fourth. "Kill 'em now and hang 'em dead for a while." "They're dead now, I'll warrant," said the first. "That they're not. I saw one a-struggling just now. Just coming round again, I should say, after a beautiful sleep. I'll show you."
Somehow they managed to be worse than the trolls.
Well, yeah, I think
Having
there's
this conversation
more
about how to eat
evil.
them. Yeah.
I think there's a more. I mean,
And they're less humanoid, They're spiders.
they are. That's true. They are spiders, and that makes them creepier and more evil just by their very nature.
But also the trolls were a little silly. They were silly.
Yeah,
They were very humanoid. They wear clothes. They're sitting
Right.
around a fire.
drinking grog.
Drinking grog. These are spiders in the dark. It's much creepier.
Much, and I mean, there's at one point William's kind of like, well, let him go. Well, no, that's in the movies, right? Or is the Let It Go in the movies?
Yes, poor little blighter.
Poor little blighter. Yeah, that's in the
Yeah.
book. See, that's the thing about the movies that I don't like. The books may remain inviolate, but not in my memory.
It is easy to confuse.
Yeah, I mean, he was willing to let him go. He
Mm-hmm.
was like, we're not going to get much out of him,
Yeah.
The spiders would never do that.
Right. Yeah.
There's something, the comical nature of the trolls makes them a little less terrifying.
yeah.
The spiders have none of that comic nature. None.
Yeah. I think Tolkien is gradually getting to the point where he's less interested in sanitizing the scary parts,
Yeah.
like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
He's not doing that as much.
He has to, because this is the scary moment.
Yeah.
This chapter, this portion of the deal is the terrifying bit for kids, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I wonder what he's not 6 yet, but he'll be 6 by the time we get to this chapter. I wonder how he's going to respond. We just started reading The Hobbit last night, actually.
Oh, really?
We finished the Chronicles of Narnia up, and
Cool.
now we're moving on to The Hobbit. So
Yeah, we took a break from Narnia. My son was kind of ready for something different.
yeah, I guess we took a break too. We still
My
have the
son's
last battle
younger
to
than
go.
yours. There's things he's just not quite getting.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why we skipped the last battle for now. It's just too allegorical, a little too heavy, and we figured, after reading all the others, he'd enjoy a break. We're going to read The Hobbit, and then we'll see what happens with the last battle later on.
And I have read The Hobbit to my son, but again, when he was younger. He picks up on a few things, but there's a lot that he doesn't. So.
Yeah, we'll see what I don't expect him to follow along with the Prancing Pony podcast, though.
No.
I love this description.
He doesn't have to know how true and a true just yet.
No, how true and a true.
Give him some time on that one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
not
not
until
asking.
you're 11.
There you go. And it's gonna be a long time before you're reading Children of Hurin. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I love this description of the darkness. This is, you talked about Ungoliant, and this reminds me of that this place of dense black shadow, black even for that forest, like a patch of midnight that had never been cleared away. Wow. Well,
Yeah,
that reminded me so much of Ungoliant that I went back to the text, and to see how she was described way back in episode 15, the text in that chapter talked about, she sucked up all light that she could find and spun it forth again in dark nets of strangling gloom until no light more could come to her abode.
Yeah.
I
think there's a clear parallel there.
Oh, yeah.
And, even though we do get a more mundane explanation for the spider webs blocking out the light, but still the parallel is intentional.
The parallel's there, definitely.
Yeah.
And of course, Shelob is described in similar terms in the Two Towers. You've got a quote.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out that we actually find out in the Two Towers that these spiders are actually the children of Shelob.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are.
So actually from the chapter Shelob's Lair, which is chapter 9 of book 4, it says, "Far and wide her lesser broods, bastards of the miserable mates, her own offspring that she slew, spread from glen to glen, from the Ethel Duath to the eastern hills, to Dol Guldur and the fastnesses of Mirkwood. But none could rival her, Shelob the Great, last child of Ungoliant to trouble the unhappy world."
And as many times as we've read that passage probably, it's only just now as we were discussing this just before the show.
Right before recording
that I recognized that the mates were her own offspring.
Yeah.
So she was, having these baby spiders. They'd grow up and she'd mate with them. She'd slay them.
Yeah.
And she'd make more, and then those would grow up, and she'd mate with them, and then she'd slay them.
Yeah.
So these spiders in Mirkwood are not only her children; they're her grandchildren and great grandchildren, depending on her line.
The lesser one. So there's a few generations of inbreeding and
creepy
to create these. But yeah, it's very, very creepy.
Yeah,
and a good reminder that Shelob herself is a child of Ungoliant.
Yeah. And I think in that context, because we see this other thing about the offspring, that she really is a child, not an offspring, not like a descendant, but literally first-generation descendant of Ungoliant.
I agree. I think she is the daughter of Ungoliant.
Yeah. The eldest daughter, probably.
Yeah, right.
Or maybe the youngest, and she's the last child.
Maybe the youngest, and she's the last one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thank goodness there's not others troubling the unhappy world.
Yeah, but what a description of these spiders. I got to say this. He hears them talk about the dwarves, and then he's going to do something here in a little bit. But it made me think of chapter 6. Remember when he escapes the goblin tunnels? Bilbo stops and thinks that he might have to go back in there for the dwarves. And he decides that he's
feeling
going
very
to.
miserable about it.
He knows his duty.
I can't talk. You know what I'm trying to say.
I do. He knows his duty, so he's going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here, he doesn't have to. He's not thinking about it. He has to actually go do it. Now that he knows that the spiders have the dwarves and are about to eat them, it's now his turn. Yeah. So this takes that moment and amps it up again even more.
That's true. Yeah. This is similar to that moment, but just magnified in so many ways.
Exactly. I think that's why I see so many parallels. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I see so many parallels with chapter 5 and this, in terms of the turning point and the moment, the moment of importance for Bilbo.
Well, and I think that is key to understanding why it's more significant than chapter 5.
Yeah.
I said top 2. I think you're probably right. I think this is number 1.
I mean, the ring is the most significant thing he finds. It's the most significant
right. It's a turning point in his career, but this is a change in him as a person.
Yeah. He's a different person now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The ring did not make him a different person yet.
Right.
It simply was a trinket that enabled him to do something.
A tool that he learned how to use quickly.
Yeah. And thankfully he learned how to use it before this moment, because now we're about to find out how he uses it.
Yeah. I do have to say, I love what he finds when he finds the dwarves. I love this description of it's horrifying, and it even says Bilbo was horrified, but it's also a little adorable. Like, it's a little silly, like dwarf
feet
is
a little silly,
sticking out of the bundles, and
tip of
a nose, a bit of a beard. There's something kind of charming
slightly
about it.
Comical. Yeah.
Slightly comical, yeah.
I think
I wonder if that's a little bit of trying to sanitize, to deflect from the horror.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Certainly the Alan Lee illustration is kind of comical.
Them
all tied up in the spider webs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only funny because it's not me. I mean, really, let's be clear.
It's only funny because I'm nowhere near it.
Yeah, I am not anywhere near that much spider web. I get freaked out when like a little bit of spider web is on my leg, right? Or, the worst thing is I'll open the garage and I'll walk out, and as I walk out, I get a spider web in the face. That frustrates. That's like, and you start to kind of dance around. Get this thing off me! Get this thing off me! And it's like one tiny little spider web that nobody can even see, and you just look like a fool in front of your neighbors.
Now we know your weakness. That's great.
But can you imagine being?
I don't like it. Don't get me wrong. I don't like it, but yeah.
But I'm just trying to compare that one single strand to
compared to what Bilbo's feeling and just how brave he is to be facing this. Yeah.
No wonder he's horrified.
Yeah.
Ooh. So, we won't read this, or at least we won't read the whole thing, but we'll touch briefly on some of the things that we learn that Bilbo's skilled at, right? We know that he's skilled at throwing stones, and then he spent a deal of his time at quoits, dart throwing, shooting at the wand, bowls, nine pins, and other quiet games of the aiming and throwing sort. I did just a quick...
You've done the work of looking all these up for us, right?
I did. Well, I didn't look up... Which one did I not look up? I didn't look up dart throwing. I figured everybody knows what dart throwing is.
I think that one's pretty straightforward, yeah.
Quoits is like the ring toss or horseshoes. There's a little post, and you have to try to get the thing as close to it as possible.
That one I do know. I've heard of that one.
And that's quoits. I want to make sure you don't pronounce an extra syllable in there, because that's not a good thing. We're just going to leave that there. Right there. Quoits.
Yeah.
And it's pronounced like KW quoits. How do you...
Quoits.
That's a really hard thing to pronounce properly.
It is.
Shooting at the wand, that involves a bow and shooting at a narrow slat of wood. So there's this vertical strip that's very narrow, and the archer is then tasked with trying to strike that piece of wood. So, it's a little tall, so that there's a little variance in terms of range, but you've got to hit that left to right deal, is very narrow. That's called shooting at the wand.
Okay.
From what I could gather, that may actually have its origins in the kind of practice that longbowmen would engage, because, when they would attack a castle, with the fenestrated top at at the edge there and the top of the castle, and you'd have sometimes those little slats that the archers would use from inside the keep to fire down. Those would be, 2 or 3 inches wide, or maybe 6 inches wide. That would be the target then, because the archers from the outside would still have to shoot into that tiny little slat.
Right.
So shooting at the wand was a way to practice shooting at that narrow target.
To practice getting it into that little arrow slit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bowls is just lawn bowling, so that's pretty straightforward. Sure. 9 pins is actually, it's from what I could tell, it either is or is related to something called skittle, and it's the predecessor of traditional 10-pin bowling. It turns out it's still very popular in Europe. The ball is smaller than a bowling ball and has no holes, so you just hold it. It looks like it's probably, I can't tell for sure, but it looks like it's about the size of a softball. The pins are placed in a diamond pattern, and there's some other differences. Each of the pins has their own name. I think the middle one's called a redhead or something like that.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So that's apparently...
I thought it was hard to remember, like, which number is which. Like, what's the 7 pin? What's the 10 pin?
I know, exactly.
Now you have to actually remember names.
Now you got to remember, oh man, I didn't get the redhead knocked down.
Right.
That doesn't sound right at all.
Just thinking of Pirates of the Caribbean, and we want the redhead.
I was reading, and I guess it's probably about time. They're getting rid of that.
They are. Yeah. They're in the process of...
Yeah.
I think they'll be closing... They're either closing them down, or they're going to close them down soon.
Yeah, they're going to get rid of... I mean, the ride will still be there, but they're getting rid of the...
They're changing that
auction.
part. Yeah,
yeah, the bridal auction is going to be gone.
Yeah, they're going to change the bridal auction and change some of the dialogue and change the costumes.
I remember when they changed it and had the women chasing the men. That was probably changed at least 10 years ago. And now they're changing that too. It's very interesting, but I'll just leave that all there. It makes sense in today's...
Keeping up with the times and,
Yeah. These were pirates, though. I mean, that's the thing.
I know. I had the same conversation with my wife.
We're applying 21st century sensibilities to, characters in the 1800s.
I know. But at the same point, I mean, it's still a 20th century depiction of pirates.
Yeah, it is. You're right. You're right.
But my wife and I had the exact same conversation either yesterday or earlier today, because...
I believe it.
She's a pretty big Disney fan, so we
fan.
talk about these things.
Yeah. Oh, man. Maybe she should do a podcast with my wife on Disney stuff.
There you go.
And then we'd never see them again.
Right.
Because
they'd record on a different night from us.
They would.
So that would be just,
ships
less
passing
time
in the night. Yeah, no, that wouldn't be a good idea.
No.
But apparently Bilbo is skilled at a lot of things. Not only those things, but he's skilled at other things. We don't know what, because the narrator says, I haven't had time to tell you about them.
I haven't had time to tell you about them. But I love that detail. It's like the narrator's...
Right in the middle of this moment, too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's reminding us, you haven't seen this guy do much, but trust me, he's good at a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's interesting that he picks this moment, because it's like, now's the moment where we finally... we will never underestimate Bilbo again.
No, we won't. And we won't be given much opportunity to either, to be honest.
No. Nope.
Yeah, what a moment. Well, let's see. So he throws the stones. He starts taking the spiders down. They can't figure out where he is.
He gets what? How many kills here?
Oh, yeah, let's see.
Couple.
Speaking of stones, spider reach. So he kills one, kills another one.
Yeah.
It looks like it's just the two at first.
The two with stones, not counting the one that he's already stabbed.
Right. So that's his third. He's now Bilbo the serial killer.
The serial spider killer. Come on. I'm the serial spider killer.
Oh yeah, I'm a mass murderer as far as spiders are concerned.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I was just reading something about some poor soul that started a house fire because they tried to kill a spider with some sort of flaming device.
No.
I think it was some sort of
probably overkill.
Oh, yeah. Well, I digress, but I'll tell you because we've talked about moths earlier. When I went to college in San Diego, we were right near the water, and the traditional long hallways, in the dorms, and the doors would stay open because it was so warm, and we would let that cool air, that breeze come through. Well, what would also come in were these moths that were, I'm not kidding you, wingspan as big as your hand, 5 inches across probably.
Wow,
they were terrifying. Okay. When they hit you, you felt it. I mean, their bodies were as big around as your pinky, and actually about that same length. Their bodies were like your pinky finger. Pretty freaking scary guys, really. I mean, I got to tell you.
Quite, yeah.
Well, college kids don't always do the wisest things. So how did we get rid of these moths?
That's a bit of an understatement. I'll just let you move on.
Let's just say that our extermination plan involved cans of Aquanet and lighters.
Oh, no. Oh, man.
And let me just say that those moths burned quite satisfactorily. But I'd never do it again. I don't recommend anybody doing it because sometimes the carpet catches on fire and you have to stomp on that. But I was 19 or 20. Please forgive me.
Not that you've ever seen these things happen.
Please forgive me. That was probably really, I was a good kid in college. That was literally the worst thing I did, so...
If that's the worst thing you did in college, then you're ahead of me.
Yeah,
so
I really was a good kid, and I didn't do much. So, but yeah, I had to mention that because killing creatures.
No, that's pretty good. What is it about playing with fire that's just so attractive?
I don't know.
At that age,
I don't know. Yeah,
but because I did that too.
Yeah, you got to light stuff on fire,
Yeah.
But not everything. Those.
Please, kids listening to this,
don't light anything on fire, kids.
Prancing Pony Podcast, PPPPSA.
Yeah, please don't. Fire is
bad.
Don't
light things on fire.
Fire belongs in fire pits and in your barbecue grill and on your stovetop.
That's right.
And really, that's about it.
Fire is for roasting meat.
Yes, it is.
And for keeping warm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Although I'd even recommend a space heater over a fire for that just because I don't want anybody to burn anything.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
It's good for s'mores.
There you go.
Roasting meats and making
campfires. Telling ghost stories. All right. Well, now that we've had a way long digression that's probably going to get me in trouble, I'm probably going to get a letter from my old college saying, you now owe us for this carpet.
We didn't know about this, Mr. Sisto. We've been wondering. Yeah. We've had stains in that carpet for 20-something years.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm sure that won't be the case. But
I mean, 19 years.
19 years. Don't I wish? I graduated. You don't want to know when I graduated. Yeah, a long time ago. All right, I'm going to let you after he relocates. I'm going to have you read that next passage. This is actually going to be our last passage of the day. Then we'll discuss it.
All right, sounds good. Bilbo, however, soon slipped away to a different place. The idea came to him to lead the furious spiders further and further away from the dwarves, if he could, to make them curious, excited, and angry all at once. When about 50 had gone off to the place where he had stood before, he threw some more stones at these, and at others that had stopped behind. Then, dancing among the trees, he began to sing a song to infuriate them and bring them all after him, and also to let the dwarves hear his voice. This is what he sang. Old fat spider spinning in a tree, old fat spider can't see me. Attercop, won't you stop? Stop your spinning and look for me. Old Tom Noddy, all big body, old Tom Noddy can't spy me. Attercop, down you drop. You'll never catch me up your tree.
My goodness, I wish I'm so glad we recorded that, but I wish I'd given you a tune to sing it to. That was brilliant. That was brilliant.
I tried to.
It was sing-songy.
Get a little bit of a rhythm to it, but also I didn't want to give it I didn't want to
put a melody
to
to it. No.
Yeah, no.
That's a shame because that would have been.
Didn't want to.
Oh goodness.
Didn't want to do any of the. Some of the recommendations we've gotten recently for goblin songs, I think, have been fantastic.
Awesome, haven't
gotten
they?
a lot of recommendations for like Tom Waits. Apparently, Tom Waits has got a lot of good goblin melodies for goblin songs.
Awesome.
I should say.
I don't know who's got
King Crimson was mine, but
So you know what
Anyway.
really surprised me about this passage? When about 50 had gone off to the when about what? 50 of these massive
giant spiders. Yeah, and he's throwing stones at them.
Yeah.
It's great.
One at a time. I mean,
Yeah.
He is more courageous than I thought. 50
Yeah.
of these spiders, and clearly there's more. He's just, waiting until 50 had gone off to where he'd stood. And then he threw some more at those and at others that had stopped behind. I mean, this is pretty intense numbers. I also love that
This is a bold moment for little Bilbo, for Mr. Baggins.
It really is. And I love the moment where we get to see that one of the reasons he did this was to let the dwarves hear his voice. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I like that.
I want my friends to know I'm here and that I'm working on a solution and we're going to figure this out.
That's true. It's not just, wanting to vanquish the spiders. It's thinking about his friends too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
It really is. Well, before we wrap up, I'm sure you've got something, being the word nerd that you are, on Attercop and Tom Noddy?
You know I've got stuff on Attercop and Tom Noddy.
Good.
Of
Talk
course.
to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, this comes again from one of my favorites, Ring of Words, Tolkien in the Oxford English Dictionary.
Oh, yes.
So, Attercop is a regional dialect word for spider with a long history. It's first attested in Old English in an 11th century medical treatise.
Oh, my goodness.
Interestingly enough. Tolkien would have encountered the word when he was still an undergraduate while he was making notes on the 13th century poem The Owl and the Nightingale. And the word is actually derived from Old English ator, which means poison, and kappa, which probably on its own means spider. So it literally means something like poison spider, but ended up basically just meaning spider in Old English.
Interesting.
The latter element, kappa, is also related to the word cob, which is another word for spider.
Which we'll see in the next episode.
Today, that we will see it in the next episode. And other than the next poem, Bilbo is going to sing to taunt these spiders, that word cob actually exists today in the word cobweb.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So there you go. And I think when I was looking around, I think I saw that maybe Norwegian or Swedish or some of the other Scandinavian languages, actually their word for spider today is something like etterkop.
Oh, wow.
It's something that's cognate with this. So any of our listeners in Norway or Sweden, if they can, if you guys can confirm the word for spider in your language,
that'd be great. Well, I know we have quite a few,
appreciate it.
actually, surprisingly.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So
I think I saw something like etterkop or something like that.
Interesting. Well, I think we'll have an answer for that probably a week after this releases. Maybe a day.
I hope so. I hope so. So as for Tom Noddy, Tom Noddy is not a spider-specific word. It's actually a 19th century term for a foolish or stupid person. It probably originates in a regional dialect. It's basically just made up of Tom, the personal name, and think of, terms like tomfoolery and stuff like that, for how Tom can work its way into a word like that. And also noddy, which is another word for a foolish person.
Okay.
So this explains the narrator's comment later on where he says that Tom Noddy, of course, is insulting to anybody.
Spider or not.
But I also, spider or not, it's just not a nice thing to call somebody. But also, I noted that it's a 19th century term, and I remember back when we talked about Chapter 5, we talked about the Victorian tendencies of Bilbo's riddles.
Right.
And it seems like we're seeing it again in his freestyle poetry.
In his freestyle. Bilbo's freestyling.
Bilbo's like epic rap battle with the Attercops.
Yeah, there you go. It's not quite up there with Finrod and Sauron, but it's close.
No, it's not. Although it is interesting because I would like to think about that. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about it in the next episode. It does kind of feel like there's an element of using song as a weapon, which I kind of love.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely feels.
I think
that way.
it's a much smaller scale than Finrod and Sauron,
just a
but
little.
it's in the same
vein.
It's in the same ballpark, or the same sport at least.
Yeah, there you go. Well, folks, that is where we're going to stop the book for today. But please, as we always tell you, stick around. We're going to talk a little bit more about that big news that we mentioned last week. And then, of course, we have a lot more good stuff for you. A couple of really good questions in Bartleman's bag this week.
And also, most likely, who am I kidding? Probably at least one bad joke coming your way. But before that, we've got some important things to talk about. And why don't you kick us off?
Well,
with
like
that,
we talked about last week, if you follow us on social media, you already know this. But this really is big. I mean, big, big, big. You saw the news that we have been invited as special guests to Mythmoot 5. Now, that's taking place in Virginia in the month of June. It is just an unbelievable opportunity that we have. I never imagined that, here we are 2 years after we started this show, and we're going to be at Mythmoot 5 doing something amazingly cool while we're there, a live episode broadcast.
That's right. We're going to be in the main room with no other events during our time slot.
Wow, how are they doing that? That's so
we're going to
cool.
have the whole of Mythmoot there to join us. And we're going to be interviewing some amazing people.
And we get the
show.
longest time slot that they do, which is 90 minutes. So, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
We've already confirmed that both John Garth and Corey Olson are going to sit down with us again. We've already interviewed them on the show, but we're going to get a chance to visit them since they'll be at Mythmoot. And we've also confirmed with Douglas Anderson, the editor of the Annotated Hobbit, that he'll be joining us. Now, the show is going to air live on Facebook at the time of the event, and we'll get you the date and time. Probably next time we'll probably have something a little bit more firm. But it will also be released, hopefully, the very next day, as I think episode 88, if I do my math right.
I think that's right. And also, if we stay on schedule, that event will be taking place right as we're wrapping up The Hobbit and getting ready for season 3. So really well timed. It's almost like we planned it that way.
Yeah, not this time. We really didn't. It was truly coincidental. And, it just means that after we get back from Mythmoot, we'll have the opportunity to do some transition stuff and then hit Lord of the Rings, hit Fellowship of the Ring pretty quickly after that. So, can't wait. What a summer this is going to be. Now, Mythmoot is generously covering our event registration, which also includes the meals, so it saves us quite a bit. But, we still have to find a way to get there and stay there for a few days. And unfortunately, Virginia is still about 3,000 miles from California. And we still can't seem to find an eagle when we need one, or two, actually, as the case may be.
No. So that's why we're coming to you, our listeners, to ask you, as we do every episode, to consider joining our Patreon family at patreon.com/prancingponypod. We weren't going to do a live episode from a moot until we got to our next goal, actually, but we just couldn't turn this opportunity down. So that's why we're now coming to you to help us make it happen.
And we trust you will. We really think that you're going to get us to that level. And, like we said, we weren't going to do that unless we were at that level for 6 months. But, really, we couldn't turn this down. So we're just trusting that you'll help us get to that threshold. And you guys have been amazing so far, so wouldn't be surprised at all.
Really have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
thank you.
Thanks to you guys that we've been able to make some of these improvements, including the move to weekly episodes, all the extra content that we do, which is one of our really cool rewards.
And one of our rewards is exclusive content, like our postscripts to each episode. As you've heard us say a few times now, we record these episodes a couple of weeks in advance, and then we listen to them before they're released to see if there are any jokes that fell through the cracks, any mistakes we want to correct, topics we wished we had dived into a little bit more. And we put those into a short, usually about 10-minute or so postscript that's available to our Patreon
Sometimes a little
supporters.
longer, sometimes a little less, but and that exclusive postscript usually releases the same day as the episode that it follows. I mean, every once in a while we've had to do one a little bit late, but usually within the same day. So if you want access to that bonus, to the exclusive content and some of the posts that we put up that are also exclusive, be sure to join the Fellowship of the Podcast. Again, thank you. Thank you to those of you who've already joined. You really are helping to make this show even better, and you're helping to send us to Mythmoot. And, of course, we also want to give a very special shout-out to Jason in British Columbia and D-May in Alaska. They're our patrons at the Kier Dance contribution tier. If you want a personalized shout-out on our episodes, well, now you know where to go.
And while we truly do appreciate your support, I cannot stress this enough. We do not want you to feel obligated by any means. We would love for you to consider come visiting us at Patreon and joining the fellowship, but only if you can afford it and only if you think we've earned it. We know some of you can't and are choosing other ways to support us. We're very grateful for that. But even if you can't join us at Patreon, just keep enjoying the podcast. We will keep making it.
Absolutely. Well, Sean, why don't we go ahead and get on with Bartleman's Bag?
Why don't we do that? So for our first question today, I'm going to go pretty far back, and it's funny. I think we were just talking about one of these questions from Tarek in Chicago about the Green Elves of Ossiriand, like the one we answered a few episodes ago when we talked about Beorn. Well, a few months ago, Tarek sent us a few different questions about the Green Elves, and I saved this one for tonight. So here we go. Tarek said, "You guys have revisited the Green Elves of Ossiriand several times, but they still continue to intrigue me." Well, there you go. Yeah. He sent us quite a few questions about them.
Yes, he has.
He said, "Are the Nandor and other Sylvan elves we see in Lothlorien and in Mirkwood in the Third Age descendants of these very same elves from Ossiriand? Maybe some of them are actually still around from that same time period. Who knows?" He says, "If so, I found their description and mannerisms in the Mirkwood scene in The Hobbit to be rather curious. They struck me as more sprite-like here, as opposed to the Quendi we're introduced to and grew accustomed to in the Silmarillion. I wonder if Tolkien was thinking of the same Nandor or Sylvan elves when he first thought up the elves and under the rule of the Elven King in The Hobbit." So, Alan, why don't you take this one first?
Well, go not to the podcast for counsel, for they will say both no and yes. The answer is found in Unfinished Tales in the appendices to the History of Galadriel and Celeborn. In Appendix A to that, the Sylvan Elves and their speech. That gives us the answer, and here's the quote from that. "The Sylvan Elves, I can't pronounce this. It's the W's that mess me up. Tawarwaith?
Is it Tawarwaith, I think?
Tawarwaith. There we go. The Tawarwaith were in origin Teleri, and so remoter kin of the Sindar, though even longer separated from them than the Teleri of Valinor. They were descended from those of the Teleri who, on the great journey, were daunted by the misty mountains and lingered in the vale of Anduin, and so never reached Beleriand or the sea. They were thus closer akin to the Nandor, otherwise called the Green Elves of Ossiriand, who eventually crossed the mountains and came at last into Beleriand. So the Sylvan Elves left the march to Valinor before ever crossing the Misty Mountains. They were pretty much the first ones to bail. I mean, they started to go, but they left. Now, some of them later left the area around Mirkwood and did keep going to Beleriand. Those were the Green Elves of Ossiriand. So the Mirkwood Elves of the Third Age would be more like cousins of the Green Elves, or of any that were left, rather than their descendants. Because we're certainly never told that any of the Lyquendi or the Green Elves moved back east after Beleriand was destroyed.
No, we're not. And I think, honestly, since part of Ossiriand actually survived as Lindon, remember that's that area west of the Eärendil on the map in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, and elves actually stayed there under the rule of Gil-galad. It's pretty likely that a lot of the Green Elves just stayed put.
Yeah, honestly. The ones that didn't drown when Beleriand went under.
Right, yeah, except for those.
Yeah.
Any ones who survived probably just stayed where they were. I mean, that was their home. That's where they'd lived.
Right.
So they probably enjoyed what was left of it.
Yeah.
But we do know that sounded very, very cold. I didn't mean it that way, but you know what I mean. They probably stayed there with what was left of it. But anyway, we do know that some of the Noldor and the Sindar moved east.
Yes.
And became rulers over the Sylvan Elves that they found there. So that's how Galadriel and Celeborn became rulers in Lothlorien.
Want a kingdom? Find inferior people. I mean, really, that seems to be the tip.
Yeah, pretty much. We shall live as kings. And that's actually how Thranduil became king in Greenwood, which, of course, is now Mirkwood. Now, as for why the Mirkwood elves seem more sprite-like and less noble than the elves of the Silmarillion, I think the answer to that is found in Appendix B to that same chapter of Unfinished Tales, which is called The Sindarin Princes of the Sylvan Elves. It says there that Oropher, Thranduil's father, was of Sindarin origin. Compared with the elves of Doriath, his Sylvan folk were rude and rustic. Oropher had come among them with only a handful of Sindar, and they were soon merged with the Sylvan Elves, adopting their language and taking names of Sylvan form and style. This they did deliberately, for I'll skip ahead a little bit, they came from Doriath after its ruin and had no desire to leave Middle-earth, nor to be merged with the other Sindar of Beleriand, dominated by the Noldoran exiles for whom the folk of Doriath had no great love. They wished indeed to become Sylvan folk and to return, as they said, to the simple life natural to the elves before the invitation of the Valar had disturbed it.
sort of a back to nature movement.
Yeah, basically. And, so the Elven King, or Thranduil, himself is Sindarin, but he was one of only a few Sindar who came to the Sylvan Elves and, migrated to their land with the intention of assimilating to their way of life and ruling them.
And ruling them.
but of living a more Sylvan way of life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why by the time we meet them in the Third Age, they are more Sylvan, they are more dangerous and less wise, as the wonderful quote from the next part of the chapter
I love that quote.
is. Yeah, it's great.
That's a great question.
There you go. Yeah, great question, Tarek. Alan, do you want to go ahead and take the next question?
I do, but I want to comment on what we just saw there. I thought, again, I'm trying not to bash the films too hard, but it is interesting because in the films, Thranduil feels himself so vastly superior to those, terrible Sylvan elves. I mean, remember, that's why he could never conceive of Legolas and She Who Shall Not Be Named ever getting together. It's because she's a Sylvan elf and he's Sindarin. And yet the whole point of them coming was to become like...
Was to live among them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't think so much that that the Sindarin were superior to the Sylvan. They really liked the Sylvan lifestyle. They wanted to become like the Sylvan. So
yeah, that's a good point.
That felt, I didn't even know that at the time that felt weird. It just felt weird. But I do love that quote from Appendix P. I thought that was really, really good. Though I will tell you this.
Yeah.
Every time I hear the word rude, even though I know it's referring to something like, rustic, like when the
rude harp,
when Finrod played on the rude harp, and here the Sylvan folk were rude and rustic, I just can't help but think of, the Sylvan folk going, "Get out of my way, you jerk!"
Yeah.
I know that's not rude, but it's rude and it's hilarious, and that's why I think that way. All right, so those are my thoughts on that. As you can tell, my thoughts are a little less sophisticated than Sean's tonight, but
they're just a little rude. They're
a little rude,
but not rude in that way.
No, rude like the trolls, not rude like the spiders. There we go.
Right. You're not a monster.
No, not of course. Going on then to the next question, Sean H. in Derby, England, wrote in with a very nice tribute for a Tolkien artist who recently passed away. Here's what he said. I don't know if you saw recently that Tolkien artist Roger Garland has sadly passed away after a battle with motor neuron disease. As an aside for reference, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease is a form of motor neuron disease. That's the kind of condition that he had. Okay. I don't know if he had ALS specifically, but he had motor neuron disease. Sean goes on to say, Garland is one of my favorite Tolkien artists and very underrated in my opinion. When people think of Tolkien-inspired art, they always reach for Howe, Lee, and Naismith, but often overlook Garland. Many of my cheap old copies of History of Middle-earth have Garland covers, and he did a great cover for Unfinished Tales. I think Mr. Garland perhaps deserves a shout-out on your great podcast. In relation to all this, perhaps a question I could offer up for Bartleman's Bag may be, what is your favorite piece of Tolkien-inspired art and why? Well, we did hear the news about Garland's death, and we want to thank Sean and Darby for giving us an opportunity to talk about him and his work. We'll put some links up in our show notes. Tolkien Gateway has a number of his images, all with permission, I might add. Thanks again, Sean from Darby. So, Sean from Texas, do you want to share your favorite piece of Tolkien-inspired art?
If I could pick one favorite piece, I would. I don't think I can, but I can list out a few.
Yeah. Let's just go there.
I think I'll start by giving a little credit to the late Roger Garland. His Tale of the Sun and Moon is one of my absolute favorites. That's the one that illustrates Arion sailing the sun through the door of night.
Love that.
That is so cool. So much color, and it's just
that's his style. His images are really colorful. Very
they are
bold style.
Really, strong contrasts and bright colors.
Yeah.
I do have to confess that I am one of those people who's a big fan of Lee and Howe and Naismith.
I know, me too.
Ted Naismith's The End of the Age. That's the one that shows the Noldor marching out of Tirion towards the rising moon.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of the one across the Helcarax. I remember which one you're talking about now, the coming out of Tirion. Right.
That's actually my current laptop wallpaper and has been for about 2 years because I love it so much. I love John Howe's Fingolfin's Challenge.
Yeah.
The one of him fighting Morgoth. There's so much motion.
There's such a dynamic energy
fight.
In that one.
And you see just the bashed in ground all around them. It's just
and the stark
beautiful.
Black and white. Oh.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's stark and it's beautiful in a kind of a horrific way.
I should clarify the black of Morgoth and the white of Fingolfin. Not that the image is black and white; it's a color image. But
right.
I just want to make sure anybody listening didn't think I meant that it's a black and white.
But there's a really strong contrast there.
Very strong.
As there is in another of his works that I'm really fond of, Éowyn and the Nazgûl.
Yeah. Oh, that
which
is a good one.
Very, very similar, and you see again, you see the black of the Witch King and his steed and Éowyn.
Yeah.
Sort of this pop of light.
That's the one. By that point, her helmet's
light.
off, so you've got the flow of her hair.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see her hair flowing.
That's a great image.
Let's see. Just from that same chapter, I've got a print of Alan Lee's Battle of the Pelennor Fields in my office. I love that one.
Yeah.
I guess I do like some of the the big names.
Classics.
Some of the classics. But there are a lot of artists out there now doing doing new stuff that I'm a big fan of. There's an artist named Jenny Dolfen who is in Europe. I believe she's in Germany.
I believe so.
And she's got a spectacular picture of Eärendil and Elwing.
Oh, yes.
It's called Eärendil the Mariner.
And her portraits are phenomenal. Her face, the faces.
They really are.
Oh, man, she's,
Yeah, and this one's fantastic. You see Eärendil just at the prow of the ship. He's got Elwing. He's cradling Elwing in his hand. That's super
beautiful
cool.
Image.
I feel like I'm being kind of obvious with this one because it was last year's winner of the Tolkien Society Award for Best Artwork. But Maglor by Elena, and I hope I'm getting her name right. I think it's Kukanova or Kukanova. I don't know if anyone listening knows how to say her name and can set me straight on that. But she's got an image of Maglor by the shore playing a harp, and it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
There's just so many and it kind of changes
That's
for me.
tough.
It from day to day. I'll probably pick different ones tomorrow, but
that's true. I mean, if you ask me this, 6 months from now, we're in the middle of the Lord of the Rings, I'll probably give you some different choices.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like you, I'm guilty of really enjoying those mainstream artists, Lee, Howe, and Naismith, those big three. And I'll pick out a few from each by name. From Ted Naismith, probably my favorite of all of them is Tuor Reaches the Hidden City of Gondolin. Absolutely love that image.
Yep.
His Eärendil the Mariner, you can really barely make out Eärendil. It's more about the boat it's when he's heading over, I think. I mean, he's in this white ship with the white sail. It's a vertical image. And it's blue, and then there's the clouds in the sky.
I know the one you're talking about. Yep.
So much color and it's
very striking. Yeah.
It's very striking, and I know this is weird to say it reminds me of something in Narnia, but it reminds me a little bit of the image that's described at the beginning of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader that's so real that you feel like the water's moving.
Okay.
And, of course, in that story it is because the painting becomes a gateway to Narnia, but the image just feels so real that you can almost see those waves, and it's just beautiful. And then I would also add The Hill of the Slain, which just moves me to tears almost every time I see it.
That's the one with Brienne
standing in front of and with her hands in front of her face, just sobbing.
Yeah.
I have to admit I don't normally like his people images as much as I like the people images from others. I think I probably tend to like John Howe's people more, but that one is a different story. That one's just amazing. From Alan Lee, I'd pick another Gondolin image. The one Hurin and Huor are carried to Gondolin, where they're on the eagles' backs going through the pass. And then also the Death of Smaug, which is just this fiery, really dramatic moment of Smaug falling into the lake near Lake Town. Water and steam and fire everywhere. It's amazing. And then the wonderful work that serves as the cover art for Children of Hurin. Turin.
Oh, yes, that's a great one.
Yep. That's a great one. But from John Howe comes maybe my favorite individual piece of art. If I only name one, it's The Death of Glaurung. So much energy. You can really feel the heaviness of Glaurung, the texture of his hide or of his skin, whatever you want to call it. You can hear the flow of the river.
Yeah.
You can see the desperation in Turin's, vertical as he kind of stabs upward to get to Glaurung.
Yeah, reaching up to stab.
Yeah, and then the fire coming out of Glaurung's mouth. It's such an image. And then of course his iconic Bilbo's front hall. You're there at the kind of the back of the hall looking out.
Oh, yep.
And you can see the furniture and the chairs and the just iconic, truly iconic. And then you already named Fingolfin's challenge. I'd add a couple by Roger Garland, though. I love his Gandalf. There's just a beautiful Gandalf resting image that I love.
Yep, I know the one.
And then he's got this beautiful panorama that includes so much of Middle-earth. I can't even describe it. Just look up Roger Garland panorama. You'll find it. I would agree with you about the newer pieces by these artists that are just doing amazing work. You mentioned Jenny Dolfen and Elena. And there are so many others. On DeviantArt, there's, at least a dozen that come to mind, and I know there are more beyond that. But I also have to admit, I still have a soft spot for Daryl Sweet's art, simply because it was the first Tolkien art I'd ever seen, even with the silly little feathers, feather plumes and the helmets.
His Fall of Numenor, that was on the cover of that old gold Silmarillion that we both had.
Yeah, that's dramatic.
That is. I mean, the just explosion of the temple that you see there is
powerful stuff.
Yeah,
I loved his Return of the King cover and seeing just that tiny sapling.
Oh yeah.
Such a symbol. I loved it. But
we shared a picture of some of your old Daryl Sweet covers.
Yeah, that's right. I did. I did.
Yeah.
So that was the first Tolkien art I'd ever seen. They were the first covers. Well, not counting the Rankin and Bass, because my copy of The Hobbit, my first copy of The Hobbit was the one that used the stills from the animated movie. So I didn't see.
Right.
I never even saw Sweet's Hobbit cover, for instance. I only saw his Lord of the Rings covers. So anyway.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very cool. Well, that was another fun one that didn't require too much research. I guess it did require a little research for me, because I can never remember the names of the works of art.
Me neither.
And I do want to refer to them properly and give proper credit when I talk about them. But hey, thank you to my namesake Sean in Derby.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Sean. Well, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Still, don't leave, though, folks. Please wait for the music. As always, we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you join us again next time when we wrap up Chapter 8 of The Hobbit.
And we'll finally welcome to the stage everyone's favorite Elven King. Well, maybe not everyone's favorite.
Such a fashion plate.
Yeah, maybe not everyone's favorite, but the only one we typically call the Elven King. His real name you must find out for yourself.
Oh, I knew you were going to go there. Well, except for the fact that we just said it in the mailbag segment.
I know, yeah. I know. Thanks for ruining my joke.
Well, I do that. Folks, we want to encourage you to read along and take notes in your own copy of The Hobbit, so please check out the official library tab on our website, the prancingponypodcast.com. We've got links to everything from inexpensive paperbacks, which are perfect for taking notes in, to the really good stuff for your Tolkien collection, which you don't want to take notes in.
That's right. And in the meantime, if you wouldn't mind heading over to iTunes for us and leaving us a review, we'd really be grateful for that. Those reviews help us get a bit more visibility in iTunes, and that just means a bigger and more exciting community of Tolkien lovers listening to us.
And thanks to those of you who have, by the way. We read every single one of them, and we really do appreciate all the nice things you say about us.
In fact, we've now started picking out one special review every week to feature on our social media networks. It's just our little way of saying thank you. So if you'd like to see your name, or your alias, at least in lights on our pages, now it's easy. All you have to do is leave us a review. And also, make sure you never miss an episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast by subscribing through iTunes or your favorite podcast app. You can find us in pretty much any podcast directory.
Yep, and we're even on Potable now. Potable is a new podcast discovery platform that helps you find new and emerging creators and recommends them to you, kind of like Netflix does. While other apps make you sort through these clunky charts to find your new favorite podcast, Potable learns your interests and recommends new shows and even individual episodes, both popular, super popular shows and total undiscovered gems. So you can spend less time searching and more time listening.
And we want to thank all of you who have become part of our social media family. We set out to start a Tolkien conversation that everyone could join, which is why we have our online common room on Facebook at the Prancing Pony Podcast and on Twitter at Prancing Pony Pod. And we recently crossed the 2,000 mark on our Facebook page, didn't we?
That we did. Thank you all for following us, and stay tuned. We use that a lot. So make sure that you are actively following us and that you've prioritized it, because Facebook will shove it much further down your feed.
Yes.
They'll make us pay to tell you things.
Yeah.
But you want to hear from us, so be sure to prioritize us. One last thing, as always, don't forget to send your questions, comments, or your favorite spider swatting song to Barlaman at theprancingponypodcast.com, and we will try to get them into our next episode. Well, an hour 40, still far too short a time to spend amongst such excellent and admirable listeners, but until next time.
Farewell, friends.